Welcome to the Around the Republic podcast. I am your host, Brian Nichols, associate editor at the Libertarian Republic, and today marks yet another edition to our summer interview series. For today's episode, I am joined by Young Americans for Liberty's Cliff Maloney Jr. Cliff is the president of Young Americans for Liberty, which is a nonprofit youth organization based in Arlington, Virginia that boasts over 900 college chapters across the country. YAL's mission is to identify, educate, train, and mobilize youth activists committed to winning on principle. Before YAL, Cliff served as the National Youth Director for the Rand Paul presidential campaign and built an apparatus of 507 Student for Rand chapters. He has built field programs for over 22 campaigns, including Dog Catcher, State Legislature, Congress, Senate, and Presidential. Cliff's appeared on Fox Business and Reason TV. He has been also published in Time, The Hill, Huffington Post, and The Washington Examiner. Cliff enjoys empowering freedom activists to find the most productive ways to advance the principles of liberty. You can follow Cliff on Twitter at LibertyCliff with 2 F's, and find YAL at yaliberty.org. Cliff, thanks for joining.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me today. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad we were able to get this set up. I know we had a few timing changes we had to work around there, but otherwise, I think this is going to be a really great interview. And as the folks listening know, this is a part of the interview series here for the Around the Republic podcast to focus on the coalescing of essentially, I want to say movements, but the different factions within the larger right side of the political spectrum, be it conservative, libertarian, moderate, or the likes. And as a pretty established, mover and shaker here in the millennial movement, especially with building these great chapters across the United States for Young Americans for Liberty, definitely think you're going to have some great perspectives as to how to accomplish that goal. But really quick, a great big thank you to our listeners for joining us for this week's podcast. The Around the Republic podcast is a part of former Libertarian presidential candidate and recently announced United States Senate candidate Austin Peterson's Libertarian Republic empire. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, please feel free to subscribe and share. Also, feel free to give me a follow on Twitter on Twitter at @BNicholsLiberty. All right, so Cliff, first and foremost, I think it'd be great for you to kind of go ahead and kind of give us an introduction as to your starting off into the liberty movement. Prior to your days at Young Americans for Liberty, what really got you started on this path that's led you so far so quickly?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what, Brian. Feel free to cut me off, but I'll try to give you the juicy details. So in 2010, I was in college. Studying to be a math teacher, and was excited for that. And I have a lot of passion in teaching kids, and it was something that really interests me. And I found this video on YouTube. There was this guy, it was this old man from Texas named Ron Paul, who I've since got to know very well. And I found this video. It was the moment where Dr. Paul was pretty much educating the American people after an exchange with Rudy Giuliani about blowback and just understanding foreign policy and understanding, what freedom really is and why certain countries have, attitudes towards us, or at least, really what a sober foreign policy looks like. And so that was a really interesting moment for me. And I was very apathetic before that. I was not really politically or philosophically engaged. And, I started to really, I like to call it the black hole of YouTube videos, right? The black hole of Ron Paul YouTube videos where, you're kind of putting pieces together and this guy makes a lot of sense. And you're like, well, how is this guy not president? And how is, this libertarian philosophy not more mainstream? And so I dug in. I started to read a lot, reading Hayek and Rothbard and Mises, and really just trying to figure this whole thing out. And the pieces started to fall into place. And I got involved in 2011. I actually ended up interning for Ron Paul on the Hill. Dr. Paul's team hired me, and that was a life-changing experience. In 2012, I got involved. I went out to Iowa for the campaign. We got to bring Dr. Paul to Pittsburgh. But I met a man during the campaign or during my time in D.C. I met a guy named Jeff Frazee. And Jeff Frazee was he's currently my mentor, somebody who has really helped me to develop as a leader and just as an individual. But he started Young Americans for Liberty back in 2008 after Ron Paul ended his presidential race. And so what happened was I kind of had this opportunity. He said, well, you need to start a Young Americans for Liberty chapter on campus. So I became a member. I was the founding member. I went to a small school, University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown, out in western central PA. And I was a founding member of my Young Americans for Liberty chapter, and was chapter president. And really, we just built it. I mean, we built a presence on campus. And in 2013, I went to my first Young Americans for Liberty national convention. And I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, young guy. I was a junior in college. And that was actually when I got promoted to run Pennsylvania as the Pennsylvania State Chair. That's a program we run here, a state chair program for current students to really, take the strength and the success they've had on their campus and to help and assist other chapters throughout the state. And so I built this really cool network in Pennsylvania. We really took Pennsylvania to the next level with Young Americans for Liberty, empowering students across the state to do events. And, I ended up doing my student teaching. I did some time overseas in New Zealand, some time here, but made a really interesting decision in 2014. And this was after I worked on a campaign in California for a short time. And I decided to not teach. I decided to actually take a job at Young Americans for Liberty full time. Jeff Frazee, as I said, gave me a call that, he kind of wouldn't let me hang up until I said that I'd come be a regional director and run the Northeast region. And so made a decision, came out to YAL. That was 2014, and took the Northeast to new heights. And then in 2015, got the call of a lifetime from Senator Rand Paul asking me to be his national youth director. I was 24 years old, and that was a very, just life-changing moment.
So that's a heck of a phone call to get. Jeez.
Yeah, and it was, and I'm very proud and blessed and fortunate. I put a lot of hard work in to be able to get to that point, and then got that role. And we built some really cool recruitment tactics and some processes. And one of the things I'm very proud to say, despite Rand not winning the nomination, we were able to start, as you said in the opener, 507 students for Rand chapters. And there's a lot of techniques we used to get there. But what people have to realize is, the main driver for that is the principles of liberty. The principles that Ron stood for, the principles that Rand stands for. Those are the types of things that people need to realize that there's a lot of excitement out there. And sure, we've got some work to do, and we're working the long game here, and that's what I'm doing every day when I work with the youth. But to start 507 chapters, we really saw some excitement out there, and that gave me a lot of hope. So Rand drops out of the race. Jeff Frazee calls me, says, drive to D.C., so I drive from Iowa to D.C., and Jeff gives me the offer of a lifetime. Once again, I feel like I've just been kind of hit with a bunch of good luck. But he says, hey, I want you to take over as president at Young Americans for Liberty. We immediately started the transition. And in May of 2016, I took over at YAL. And I have now been the president for about a year and 2 months. And I can't explain to you what it's like to get to work every day with, dedicated student activists, people that care about something bigger than themselves. And like I said, when you read my intro, empowering activists to spread the ideas of freedom. We've really just, it's crazy, man. It's crazy that I get to do this every day. And we're over 900 chapters now across the country. So we have a presence on all of those campuses, and our students, they work hard. They're the ones that make it possible. They're the ones out there spreading the message. And I'm just lucky to be a part of it.
And I think that for me is just astounding, the 900 number, because it's no secret that in contemporary America, to be a, shall we say, conservative, libertarian, whatever you want to identify on the right, sure, on a college campus, it's not only not popular, but in some cases, honestly, it can be dangerous. We've watched with what's happened over at colleges like Berkeley.
Right.
I myself, I was the president for my college Republicans group in New York. And just having that title, I know that I, got daggers because of, people who were of the left and of the, I don't want to call them social justice warriors, but of that mentality of if you do not toe the line with what we're promoting as our truth, then not only are you the enemy, but you are a bad person. And they would go out of their way to demonize not only myself, but any other people who share those types of views. So the fact that you have 900 different chapters across the United States with loyal, active participants and members, that to me is just, it's so empowering. It's so, just exciting to know that we have such a great foundation going forward to really help, push the ideas of liberty, of small government going forward. So, I mean, with your role now as the president of YAL, what would you say has been, I guess, the top moment of your presidency that you've been able to experience based on your interactions with these Young American for Liberty members across the nation?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, we built the organization. One of the things I'll give Jeff tons of credit for, our mission statement, okay? So our mission statement has 4 components, and we take this very seriously. When we budget, when we build our programming, when we build out just our plans for the year, we really look at those 4 components. And those 4 components are pretty simple. And if you don't mind, Brian, I just want to take a little bit of time and just go through them quickly. So the first, the mission is to identify, educate, train, and mobilize youth activists, as you said, committed to winning on principle. So identify, educate, train, and mobilize. So the first 2, identify and educate, think of this as what we do on campus. This is our on-campus effort to go out, identify leaders. So set up an infrastructure, set up a foundation, a leadership team on campus, and really, have the roots with our chapters. Okay, so that's why when we identify leaders, we're setting up that chapter-based organization. The second part, to educate, is what we do when we're recruiting, right? To go out to educate students on the issues, and we do this through campus activism. Now, I will stand in any room and I will argue and defend that we are the most active and the best when it comes to campus activism and actually recruiting and engaging new people, not preaching to the choir. Okay, I want to be pretty clear about that. And so that second step, to educate, is doing campus activism, doing fun projects on campus, events like we're going to do in the fall, something called Restore the Fourth that we just announced, which is really just going out. We're giving out warrants across campus, acting as if we're the NSA, and I mean for very frivolous things. But it's supposed to be humor. We try to do things to get students to engage. We're giving them the warrant, but the reality is there's tons of information, and we're trying to engage them, get them to the next YAL meeting, get them to sign up, and that to me is what we're trying to do, is to educate students in a way that is fun, that's engaging, but that we're getting them to start to ask questions or to think outside the box and kind of break that paradigm of what, I mean, you said it earlier, a lot of people on campus, they're getting that big government authoritarian message. And the libertarian, conservatarian message is very different. We're not turning to the government for solutions. We're turning to individuals and to the community and through innovation rather than government mandates. So those are the first 2 components: identifying, setting up chapter leaders and actually building a foundation, and then educating them through campus recruitment and through really just campus activism and outreach by doing fun issue-based campaigns, national activism projects as we call them, to reach people. The third and fourth step are what we do through our national efforts, and that is to train and mobilize. So we do different events throughout the year. The 2 sets of programs I'll talk to you about, the first one being our spring summits. So we did 6 events this spring. They're one-day events, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. People come out, top student leaders, impressionable roommates, YAL members. And we actually had, in some of these cities, I mean, it was pretty crazy, some of the turnout. But in 6 different events, Boston being our largest with 503 kids, wow. We trained over 2,100 students. And so I'm very proud of that number for 6 events, averaging over 300 students at each of them. And so that to me was kind of a really successful training. But the training itself, it's not just about getting kids there. It's not a social. It's not just to have fun. And believe me, we have fun. But the reality is, we really have this theme that we run our whole organization on, and it's make liberty win. Right. WIN. And the idea is that, look, it's not just about having the right perspective or having the right beliefs or the right philosophy. It's about learning how to be more effective at reaching other people, with that philosophy. So the training components, we focus on persuasion. We focus on ways to actually authentically reach people. We'll do role playing, we'll do workshops, we'll do trainings that are hands-on so that students really, they kind of get out of your shell a little bit, and let's actually train and teach each other how to reach people. And one of the best examples I give is, I usually open up the summit by saying, how many people here have persuaded their socialist uncle, to come to the ideas of liberty, right? And there's no hands in the audience because, if you can't even persuade the one you love, you need to actually realize that you have to work on it.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that we do. And I know I'm vamping here. Let me say this. And then our national convention each year is coming up July 26th to the 29th. And that'll be a great event. That's 4 days. We only invite 400 of our top student leaders. And that'll be something that, in my opinion, really sets us up for success for the year because we teach students the basics of how to run a campus organization, how to recruit speakers to come to campus, how to send emails, all of the functionality training, as well as that persuasion training, campaign training, public policy process training, just teaching kids the basics of how to be successful and how to advance our ideas. And the last component to mobilize, we hired Justin Grice. He's now our director of mobilization. He's fantastic. And he works day and night to get our students connected with people in different parts of the country, to help them find jobs, to help them, get in the room for interviews. And that is a really something that has taken the organization. You asked me, what's one of the most impactful things we've done? I think it's focused on that mobilization to get people into roles so that they can learn, they can get on-the-job experience, and ultimately, we want to have people that believe in the principles of liberty in every corner of every industry in the country. And I think that's exactly what our pipeline does. And as we continue to grow, I'm excited. I'm ready for, the majority of Congress to be YAL alumni. Let's put it that way.
Amen. And I think one thing that really excites me is because when you look at the 900 chapters across the nation that you have for YAL, that's not just the 900 chapters. There are thousands of students a part of this who, when they go through the 4 years of college and they've been able to, like you said, they've been identified, they've been educated, they've been trained, and they've been mobilized, they can then go into, the quote unquote real life game, if you will, and they can go ahead and take what they've learned and those ideas of liberty, of personal responsibility, economic freedom, and they can apply those not only to their own personal lives, but to hopefully make an impact in their local governments, whether it's a city council or it's a state legislature, you name it. And I myself am the vice chair over here in Philadelphia for the America's Future Foundation.
Great.
Which is very, very similar in terms of the mission that YAL has. It's just we focus more on after college, if you will. So like you're busy working professional. Just hearing what YAL has been able to do, I think it's almost like a perfect transition. Not to plug my own group I'm a part of, but I mean,
well, I'll tell Bob Dick that you're making plugs on the air, and I'm sure he'll enjoy that.
Bob's a great guy. No, and yeah, actually, we just had our back in April. We had our national convention down in Dallas, and it's amazing to see how great an outreach we have. Not only just the America's Future Foundation, but just the overall presence of these conservative, conservatarian ideals that are out there. It's just that people need to, I think one thing I've noticed, from my own friend circle of those who have either just finished their college experience or they're currently in the college experience, is that, like I said earlier, being a libertarian, conservative, Republican, what have you, on a college campus, it's hard. And it makes it very intimidating to go ahead and really say who you truly are politically, because those on the left that maybe don't agree with what your ideas are, they'll demonize you. They'll go after you, and they'll shame you into not saying those ideas. So I think it's great to know that we have these organizations out there that can really, help those of us, on the small government side of things, have almost a coalition to go forward and really, feel unity and promote the ideas of liberty and really work together to achieve our missions on a grander scale. So that was my vamp. Sorry, I had to go there for a second. So going forward, Cliff, looking at the goal of this podcast today is to really find the best way forward that both Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, moderates, neocons, where we have 80%, we'll say 60 to 80% common goals. But we do have those, 20 to 40% differences that really do, fraction our ability to work together. It really makes it so it's hard for us to work together because of those differences. So, I'm looking right now, and I know it was literally just announced that Gary Johnson, former Libertarian Party candidate, he just launched his Our America initiative, literally like within the past hour, officially launching like his new group, which is essentially according to their website that I'm going through right now, it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing successful reforms that limit government, maximize freedom, and prevent DC elite from hijacking our liberty. Which I think is great. Gary had his flaws, but I think for him to go out and, at least go into the activism mode is great. You being president of YAL, what do you see as the best route forward for those on the right to coalesce, kind of get over our 20 to 40% differences, acknowledge them, be able to discuss them, and try to then go and enact our common goals, our commonalities in government going forward?
Yeah, let me list a few things, and feel free to dive in and ask me questions on them. So the first thing I think to separate, people love labels, and honestly, it's funny because Trump has kind of turned labels on their head. Different people that would say they're libertarian, are diehard Trump supporters. Other people would say they're conservative and they'd never vote for Trump. And I think it's interesting. I stand for the principles of liberty. I stand for limited government, free markets, and this idea of constitutional principles. And to me, the big thing to start is to say you need to divide those who care about ideas with those who care about access. I call it principles versus power, right? People that care about actually limiting government, people that they have a philosophical belief that says that individuals can do things better than government. And that to me should be, heck, if everybody on the quote unquote right should be, jumping for joy at that. Well, yes, of course. But it's not what you find when you look at some of these elected officials. So to me, I think that's the first place to start, is not separating, or, if we are trying to build a coalition to say, hey, we want to move forward, I think you need to really sort out who are people that have philosophical beliefs and really a set of principles that could possibly align with yours, versus who is suitless, right? Who doesn't have, any type of principles. They just want access. They want power. It's more about money, or it's about, it's just that. It's the power. And I think that's a good place to start. And the coalition needs to be the people that believe in ideas.
So let me jump in really quick, Cliff. So
yeah, sure.
So would you argue that it would be, I guess, beneficial for the movement to, I guess, really stand up and then identify those I don't want to say in positions of power, but those who have been able to take their positions, and they only have those positions for their own self-interest. And I guess I don't want to say expose them, but like to say, hey, you are literally, just in a position to grant yourself power going forward, and you're not helping our movement. And then to, I guess, systematically either primary them or whatever the next step would be. Sure. Do you think that would be an appropriate response?
Well, what I'm trying to say, the perfect example to this is the Freedom Caucus, okay? So take the Freedom Caucus, and I know, some people don't do caucuses. I got to give a shout out to my good friend, Congressman Thomas Massey, who's one of my favorites. So I don't want to put him in this category, but take the Freedom Caucus versus those Republicans who aren't in the Freedom Caucus, okay? The Freedom Caucus believes in something. They stand on principle. Okay, they're coming together, and they, to me, sadly, are some of the only hope I see coming out of D.C.
Yep.
So I'm not saying we need to expose, organizational leaders, or what I'm trying to say is we need to focus on helping those people continue to have more influence. The people like those in the Freedom Caucus,
Amen.
people like Justin Amash, Thomas Massey, people like Mark Meadows, Mark Sanford, people that actually say they're, for limiting government, and then when they get there, they actually remain principled. Unlike other people I know. I mean, I saw congressmen, coming as, these Republican congressmen. I mean, look at like the Obamacare 2.0 and just some of these things where it's like, come on, guys, it's not constitutionally, conservative.
No.
So I hope that answers the question. It's more
Absolutely.
finding people like the Freedom Caucus members who, when pushed to the test, they actually hold their feet to the fire and they stand on principle. And let's make sure we praise those people. Let's make sure we help build up those people. Let's provide resources and let's help those people and their ideas, rather than the people that kind of hide behind the, I'm on the right, or they hide in the Republican Party saying they're for limited government, and they're not. And so I think that's the first part. But the second part, you talk about what groups should do, and do you what's the strategy moving forward? One of the things I found, and I got to give credit to one of a great friend of mine, I should call her. She said to me, she's a very good supporter of ours, and she said right when I took over, I was talking about really expanding, thinking about doing high school stuff and post college stuff, and we have an alumni program, but she said to me, she said, Cliff, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, well, I was like, what? Why? What are you talking about? She said, you guys are absolutely destroying in a positive way. I'm a 26-year-old, so when I say destroying, I mean really doing well on campus. She says you're reaching all these kids. You've got a model that works, and what she said was scale that model, continue to scale it, continue to improve the quality of it, but it's leaps and bounds above what other people are doing, and don't spread yourself too thin. Focus on your niche. So that. At first, it was kind of startled me, but it was some of the best advice I've ever gotten, and I give that advice. And I, right here today, if you're asking me what do we need to do as a movement to successfully move forward, people need to find their niche. People need to find something that actually produces value, and then focus all of their energy on that, rather than everybody trying to be a one-stop shop. Everybody wants to be a consultant. Everybody wants to, and Brian, I'm not calling you out here, but I get an email a week from saying, hey, I'm starting a new podcast, or I'm starting a new Facebook page, and the reality is, and you've got a great show here. People need to find what they're good at and build quality, build quality around that and scale it up. And so that's what we're doing at YAL is our focus is on college campuses. It's a battlefield, it's fertile soil. And, we're out there presenting the message and we're succeeding. And so what I'm trying to do as the organization's president is to find ways that we can continue to see success. But not only that, I mean, we find some of these success areas and we just absolutely scale them up. And I mean, it's what we've seen success on. We had this National Fight for Free Speech campaign. We started to realize that if we could build a system, and all of a sudden, through this campaign, we've now overturned 26 of these unconstitutional speech codes.
Wow.
So that conservatives and libertarians aren't getting shut down on campuses. So that's just one example of some of the things you got to find. Find what you're good at, what you have the resources to handle, and instead of spreading ourselves so thin, let's actually focus on being successful. Let's be mainstream with the principles of constitutional government.
Man, and it's really funny that you say that in terms of doing what you're good at. Back when I was in college myself, I hosted a weekly radio show, which was top 40, 80s, 90s, and we said whatever. And I love the ability to do the radio. I truly I enjoy the opportunity to reach hundreds, if not thousands, of people at a time to be able to promote the music I liked. But I've always had this passion for politics. I've grown up in a household that politics was one of the main echelons of our entire family values. So for me, I've always been politically motivated, but I'd never had the opportunity to take my political activism and use a medium that I am so comfortable with, being radio. So my professional career, I've been in public relations, I've been in marketing and sales, but I never was able to utilize the radio like I was back when I was hosting an actual music program on the air. So when this amazing tool that is the internet / podcasts became something that I became more familiar with, I said, well, why? I'm almost like Glenn Beck approach. I said, why not use my experience doing radio and my ability to, convey what my beliefs are and hopefully bring people such as yourself onto the air to have messages of liberty promoted in a way that people can easily digest, easily, not only access, but have the ability to then share that message, which I think it's one of the things that we as those on the right have such a hard time doing, is promoting our messages in ways that are easier for people to understand. Because it's one thing for you and I to have a conversation about libertarianism or conservatarianism or conservative values. It's entirely another thing, like you said, to go out, actually speak to someone who they've never heard the message of liberty. They've never heard the message of personal responsibility and small government, to actually not only talk to them, but to help educate them to a point that they can walk away from the conversation feeling like they've actually learned something. So, with that being said, what you're doing over there at Young Americans for Liberty, I mean, it's such a vital role going forward, because really we need to have young people learning the tools of liberty to be able to go out, spread the message, and really go forward and change what we have right now on college campuses into their adult lives. Because otherwise, God, I fear for the future. But with that being said, Cliff, we are getting ready to wind up here. I'm going to give last word to you really quick. Anything you wanted to promote for yourself or for Young Americans for Liberty going forward?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I'll just wrap up what you said and said at Young Americans for Liberty. I mean, we're focused on the long game. There are tons of organizations, there are tons of, the current political process. I mean, everything is now, and we're laying the groundwork. I mean, we are building the next generation of principled leaders, and it's really, like I said, it's a blessing to do it. If you're out there and you're looking to support us, head on over to yaliberty.org. And if you're a student on campus, we would love to have you, come on over, get involved, see what it's all about. I mean, we've got tons of opportunities. And our national convention, like I said, July 26th to the 29th is coming up. You can register at yaliberty.org/convention. But Brian, it's been fantastic. If people are interested, I'm on Twitter at LibertyCliff with 2 Fs. And we're going to continue to make liberty win, as we like to say at Young Americans for Liberty. Appreciate what you're doing, Brian, and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, Cliff, thanks again for hopping on. Again, I really appreciate it. But now, until next time, folks, this is Brian Nichols from the Around the Republic podcast, joined today by President of Young Americans for Liberty, Cliff Maloney Jr. Again, follow him on Twitter at LibertyCliff, like he said, 2 Fs, and find Young Americans for Liberty at yaliberty.org. Until next time, remember, economic freedom, personal liberty. We'll see you next week.